Well, hey everybody, thanks for coming and thanks for waiting. Sorry to keep you waiting there, but these events are always a journey, and I'm glad that you're here with us on this part of it. My name is David Coogan. I'm one of the authors of Writing Our Way Out, Memoirs from Jail, and with me are three of my co-authors. I'll introduce them to you now, and then I'm just going to explain a little bit about the book and what you're going to hear tonight. To my left is Dean Turner.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for my tardiness.
Yeah, the bus system is not really what it ought to be in Richmond, is it? It's tough to get where you want to go. And over here is Stan Craddock, right? And to his left is Kelvin Belton. All right. So I met Kelvin, Dean, and Stan, and several of the other guys that are pictured on the back of our book about 10 years ago at the old Richmond City Jail, which is pictured here on the front of the book. Kind of an old romantic jail, isn't it? You know, it's got bars clanging, you know, noises and all the smells and all that. It's not like the new jail they built, which is real sterile and scary in a different kind of way. But anyway, this is where I met these guys, and I came in as a volunteer on Saturday afternoons to teach a writing class. I knew the teaching of writing. I was comfortable teaching writing. I'd been around college students teaching writing for, at that point, about 10 years. And I wanted to see if what I knew how to do as a writing teacher could be useful to people that I'd never known before in my life. I wanted to see if ordinary people could write their ways out of one mindset and into another. And I believed in the power of writing to generate the community that's needed to inquire, hopefully. I didn't come with any answers or any guarantees, but it was just this question: do you want to try this? Do you think it might work for you? And I met these guys and several others, and we started over the summer, and I gave myself, a couple months to see if that would work. And I'm like, Dave, you're asking quite a lot here, and might take more than a month. So we developed this collective. And when they all got sent away to prisons throughout Virginia, we kept in touch. We decided to write letters back and forth while they were doing their time. And I would visit some of them when I could. In any event, 5 years later, most of them were released from prison. Oh, okay. And after they were all released, we were able to meet on campus and to continue the work. And so around 2010, we had enough of a manuscript to create this book. And at first I thought, okay, well, the book is their stories. They did all this work. Let me get their stories published and sent it out. And nobody wanted to publish that book. So I asked myself why, and realized, nobody knows or cares about prisoners, and they don't care about prison writing the way they don't care about prisoners. And what Stan and Dean and Kelvin and the rest convinced me was that our stories are only as interesting as your curiosity about bringing them out. And I had to take a step back and look at myself and think, what have I done? What have I done over the last 5 years of my life? I've attached myself to these men on this little bit of an idea, and they helped me flesh out the reality of the idea. So in any event, I wrote my story into it. So this book is my memoir of teaching them to write their memoirs, and it's their memoirs too. So we're all in it together. I think of it as like team ball memoir. So that's the overview of what we did and how we came connected and what the book's about. I'm going to read to you a little bit from chapter 2. The title of this chapter is What Really Happened. And the event that we're here tonight for is called A Thread of Truth. And I don't know if you've seen Jim Maris's sculpture in the back. Amazing sculpture in the back, and I really am looking forward to getting back there and dwelling in it a little bit more. But what we thought would be an interesting event to do together was to open up this question of what the truth is and how you know what the truth is. So he's pursued that through his sculpture, and we pursued it through this book. So I'm going to read you a little bit about what happened, what really happened. This is about 3 or 4 months into the writing workshop at the jail. I was volunteering on Saturdays, and we had formed a bit of a group together. And in this section, Dean makes his first entrance. Okay, so here we are. The next week I go through the metal detector, get my visitor's badge, take the roster past the sliding steel door, hand it to the deputy at the second set of bars, escort myself to Redemption Chapel, and wait for the deputy to return with the men. Shaquilla had offered to meet me in the lobby again to help me do all of this, but I saw no reason to make her come back to work on a Saturday. She's already walked me through the process once, and she's still involved. In fact, she's added a few names to the roster, assuring me over the phone that the new guys, Dean and George, who goes by G, have been given the prompts and were asked to start writing. I passed 10 minutes leaning against the wall, my eyes tracing the patterns in the linoleum before the deputy arrives to unlock the door. In the chapel, I take the drum stool from behind the kit, place it in front of the altar, and sit. 20 minutes later, the men begin to arrive. Andre and Anton are the first ones in. "How's it going?" I ask, rising to shake their hands. "I had court last week," Andre reports in a flat voice. I open my bag and poke through my papers. They say I was this driver in a whole bunch of armed robberies. I freeze. "But I was sitting in the back of the car," he corrects, "and the only reason I was in the car was to get a ride home. I really had no idea that car had been all them robberies. You know they chased us over the Manchester Bridge and we crashed?" "Actually, no. I don't know anything about anyone's cases." "I told you," Anton says to Andre. "Oh, okay. Well, they chased us, and I mean chased. We were flying across that bridge, Dr. Coogan. Then the guy next to me throws a gun out the window. When we crashed, all the people in the car flee. And I don't know nothing, so I just put my hands up, say my name, and that I don't know nothing. That's when they come to me and beat me down." He pauses to gauge my reaction. I stare, unblinking. "At the station, they beat me again, and I passed out." He rolls up his pant leg, stops talking, and I realize he's calling me over to inspect. I lean in for a look at the lacerations. They look fresh. "They took my clothes and did an illegal cavity search when I was passed out. I woke up bleeding, but they wouldn't let me see a doctor." I'm repulsed now, and I can show it. But since I don't really know how he got these lacerations or how he got arrested beyond what he's told me, I'm also a little bit reserved. Do I need to know what really happened in order to be his writing teacher? "Can you write it?" I ask, watching him carefully and keeping my mission in my mind's eye. As he gets to work, I feel a clarifying breeze come between us. The familiar charge of the writing teacher, to know the boundary between the person and the page. Stan, Kelvin, and the others from last week walk in, followed by the new guys. Dean walks down the center aisle, bumping fists with everyone who will let him, and smiling his way to a seat by the window-mounted air conditioner. He leans against the wall, puts his feet up, and drapes one arm leisurely over the back of the pew, kind of like he's doing now. I walk over to shake his hand and ask if he has any questions about the class. "None so far," he says, then adds, "I've actually done some writing already." I'm pleased to hear this and begin making a mental note to tell Shaquilla. Then I scratch that as he goes on to tell me about a whole book he's written, the first in a 2-volume autobiography titled A Major Struggle. He asks if I'd take a look at it and maybe help him get it published. Curious to see what he's able to do as a writer, I tell him I'd read it and treat it as a starting point in our work here. He agrees and tells me his mother can send it to me if I give him my email address. I give him my business card. Stan, who's been observing this the whole time, asks for one too. G lumbers up to me, a little bit bored, shakes my hand, then turns back to take a center left pew. He's got the girth and height of a bouncer, broad shoulders, heavy arms, and a disarming baby face. I begin handing back the drafts. "Was this hard, writing like this? I ask as I make my way back to the front of the room. I want to know how they're feeling about this mental stretching that we've been doing in sentences. With great care, I step around G's leg. It's taking up half the aisle. I know for me, Stan jumps in, because I go real slow, right? I mean, it may take me an hour just to get one little half page, you know? There are some words I can't even spell. I grin and shake my head. I'm telling you, Dave, Stan persists. I'll be staring at the page, wondering what the hell word I just wrote. You know? He leans back against a cinder block and lowers his voice to a hoarse whisper. So when you go to polish mines up for the book, you're going to need an extra clean rag. He seals it with a grin. Look at that grin. And more polish, Ron adds, bouncing a bit in his seat. You're all right, Smurf, Stan allows. But it's more than just the spelling that's hard, right? What's the hardest part, I ask. Telling our stories, Ron says right away. Telling the truth, Kelvin adds. Except Andre and Anton, I notice no one sits next to anyone else. Each man has made a territory out of his place in the chapel. Right, but you know, this class is not about telling the whole truth, every single thing that's ever happened. It's about crafting a plausible truth. You're writing the story of how you got here. I know how I got here, Andre mumbles. Got the scars from the popo to prove it. No, not here in this jail, I say quickly. Here in this life. Your story is bigger than any one crime or alleged crime. A little lull settles in as they consider the proposition. Excuse me, Dr. Coogan, Kelvin says, quietly, from under his cornrows. He used to have cornrows. You can try to imagine that. What you mean, not telling the truth? I mean, speaking just for me here, the reason I came to this class was to get at the truth, how I got stuck in the revolving door of incarceration. But you can't not have a point of view, right? The facts don't speak for themselves, do they? I raise my eyebrows. Oh, okay, I see where you're going. He nods and starts marking up the handout. And to figure out your own point of view, you have to spend time with yourself. You have to care enough about yourself to challenge yourself. And that can be confusing because it's not always clear what you're challenging yourself to do. But when you figure that out, I love writing, Najee interrupts. It's like you're the star, the director, and the producer of your own movie. You're controlling everything, from who says what to how the scene looks to what it all means. Honestly, I never thought I'd love it so much. He lowers his voice. I even love it, you know, when it's hard. Because what I wrote about, my mother passing and all, that was a hard time for me. Recreating that made me relive it all over again. He softens as the memory of what he wrote came into focus. With Mines, Ronald begins, matching Najee's tone, I was writing to figure out how my mom and Debbie and the rest of the family figured out their plan for me, what they were going to do with this baby. I never really thought about that. I was piecing together stuff my mom told me was stuff I remember feeling, and then I had to see if I liked the way I was telling it. I had to ask if that was me. He trails off. Yes, I say, writing takes you away from yourself. I push the air to one side with my hand. Then it forces you back into yourself. Arguably, it raises the question of self. I touch my heart. Though I'm looking right at Ronald, strangely, he raises his hand, leg bouncing. Yes, Ronald? I just wanted to know if I can read. Thanks. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, you're next, yeah, I forgot, yeah.
I gotta see this.
You got it?
Yeah. Right here. Stop, right now?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We'll go to the end of the next page.
All right. I'm just gonna start reading, if y'all don't mind. I can't remember what I did, but I do remember being told to go to my room and prepare for a beating. When my mom's dished out a beating, it was official. It came with extension cords, belts, and shoes. This time, she's frustrated because I'm hiding under the bed. Knowing she can't get a good hit in with the belt makes her even madder. So Mom leaves the room to get reinforcement. Now, I'm thinking that she's going to get my stepdad, but she returns with scissors and begins stabbing me in different places. I can't believe it. My mommy is going to kill me. What have I done? What have I done that is so bad that she wants to hurt me like this? After my stepdad breaks it up, my mother packs a few of my things and throws me out into the hall. Not only am I bleeding, but I am homeless, confused about the situation, what to do, where to go, the whole 9 yards. I'm embarrassed, humiliated, but I know that I have to get myself together and go get some help in the morning, before the morning comes. I walk down 6 flights of stairs and a brainstorm hits me. Go to my father's house. But after I explained to him what's happened, that motherfucker turns his back on me, saying he doesn't have enough room in his 1-bedroom apartment and that I need to go to the police station so I can report the incident. My heart drops. But I suck it up like a man and keep it moving. Instead of going to the police station, though, I head back to the staircase in my building so I can finish crying and hiding out. I stay there for quite a while before a good friend of my mother comes and discovers me. She asks me, what am I doing there? Crying with bags in my hand. I tell her that my mother stabbed me with a pair of scissors and threw me out of the apartment. She asks me because she see my wounds. She gets so upset that she starts crying. Then she grabs my hand and rushes me to the police station. I'm reluctant to file a report because I know my moms will get into trouble. But I still want to protect her. Why? Because this is my mother and I love her. Still, this incident changed my life forever. I just wouldn't understand the ramifications until later. Back then, I truly believed that inflicting pain on others was the thing to do. I thought fighting was cool because my mother beat the shit out of me. I thought that was the way of life. As I became an adult, I realized that wasn't normal thinking. But then, even getting caught, which didn't happen often, didn't scare me. The one time I did get caught, the police called my mom, my parents. You talk about scared to death. I knew that nobody in the bunch was going to get their ass whipped like me. So I decided to postpone this for a few hours, thinking my mother would cool off or forget about it. The craziest thing was she didn't forget about it, but I didn't get her ass whooping either. So I knew right then and there she was starting to ease up and let me learn from my mistakes like a man. The more my mother eased up, the more shit I got into. I really wanted to please my mother and stay on the straight path and narrow, but once I realized that she was all about self, her happiness and selfish ways, I began to pursue street dreams and kingpin fantasies. Me and my friends went from small-time criminals to doing bigger things. Thanks for letting me read and let me
Hey, good evening. How's everybody doing? You know, before I came in here, right, I was sitting in my car, and I was just thinking about something, right? I'm going to share that thought before I read. How in the world can you take a crooked arrow? How can you take a crooked arrow and make it hit its mark? And I thought about it, right? It's got nothing to do with the arrow. It's got nothing to do with the arrow. It's got everything to do with the archer, Simply because, right, if you take a crooked arrow, it can't go straight. It can't go straight. But it doesn't mean that it can't hit its mark, And Dave, right, in that metaphor, Dave, right, you're the archer. Yeah, you're the archer, right? Because I wouldn't dare say that this guy's a crooked arrow, right? But I can say one thing, I'm a crooked arrow, So let me read this to y'all. Run, Stan, run. Here's a way out. Blood has been spilled. Another young man lay in a puddle of blood. But who pulled the trigger? It was like an award show question. The street Grammys were being held that night in Richmond. Don't you know you can receive a standing ovation from all your street peers if you are the one who pulled the trigger? I found myself being nominated for this award along with another person. So it was time to hit the road. But where? The classified ads read, young people between the ages of 18 and 25. No experience necessary, but must be free to travel immediately. Call for an interview, and the ad called for an interview. But did I do the crime? That's what you're asking yourself, right? I answered the ad, free to travel. I was going to Fort Lauderdale, Florida now. Are you coming with me? Did I do it? Or are you going going along, or are you going to stay? I'm working with these broken glasses. I should have gave the metaphor about broken glasses. Can you see with broken glasses? Okay. Florida opened my eyes to sunny days and an overflow of bikinis. I joined a sales team that sold magazines door to door. I was a young member of a group, 17, but I lied and said I was 19. Carolyn had developed my personality to a point where I thought I was smooth. In the book, right, if you purchase it, right, Carolyn is a prostitute, right, to help groom me. So when I say that Carolyn had polished me, Carolyn taught me a whole lot of shit, right? Not saying right shit, but a whole lot of shit. Okay. But I lied. I said I was 19. Carolyn had developed my personality to a point where I thought I was smooth. I was 6'1", 185, and easy on the eyes. My clothes were up to date and sharp. My teeth were bleach white, so I had a great smile to conceal my fangs. My shoes stayed shiny to walk in and out of your life. Plus, I had youth on my side. I was filled with raw energy just waiting to be tapped. Oh, and before I forget, I had a friend, a 38 snub-nosed revolver laying dormant in my suitcase. Being on a sales team was awesome. Each day, we had sales meetings to rehearse our game, the craft of conning people. My new instructor name was Jimmy. This cat was the smoothest brother I had ever met in my whole life. He was from Harlem, very street smart, a great con man, well over 6'2" with curly black hair. He was a sharp dresser and a downright ladies' man. He was a man's man too. I looked up to Jimmy from day one. He took in young people like myself and turned out masterpieces. We became what he needed us to be. I loved it. Someone was taking the time to teach me. Up to this point, I thought I understood the pimp game, and I did somewhat, but only at a street level, Carolyn, where a woman sold her body in exchange for her needs. But each day in our sales meetings, in and out of territory, and my understanding of the sincere art of selling grew. Our theme was that people don't want magazines. I don't think they still do. Now when you knock at the door, that's the first thing to you, I don't want it, right? But you're a salesman. Our theme was, people don't want magazines. One of the phrases we used in our pitch was people needed a magazine like they needed a hole in the head. But how do you feel about young people working? Do you think giving a young inner city youth like me an opportunity to get out of a negative environment and a chance to meet positive people and successful people like you and learn from them is a good idea or a bad idea? Now, if I ask you that, right, I kind of loaded it up, right? So I already know what you're going to say. It's a good idea. So that's where the sales pitch started, right? Because if you wanted a magazine, right, then I'm not a salesman. I'm a damn order taker, you know, and I considered myself to be a salesman. You follow me? Would you agree? Okay, but how do you feel about young people working? Okay, we were encouraged by Jimmy to stand in front of the mirror for hours and practice. He insists we know everything about our verbal and nonverbal communicative skills. Our body language should match what we said. It was a lesson that didn't come easy. On the contrary, I spent hours practicing my new craft. Every lady I sexed up, what the hell? My dark angel would have been proud of me. And I use people before they use me. Y'all, thank you for bearing with me, okay?
Hi, boy.
How you follow?
Easy.
My name's Kelvin Belton, and I don't know why Dave keep putting me in behind this guy here. I don't know. Oh, man. All right. First thing foremost, right, we're in a recording studio, so I'm going to put my disclaimer out there. Last time I didn't do it, and people find it funny, but I'm dead serious. I have a speech impediment, so if y'all got a Snickers or something, it might be a while. So y'all just bear with me, be a little patient. And for some reason, Dr. Coogan, very smart, he get his stuttering guy the longest part to read, so we're going to be here for a while. All right. I'm reading from page 19. Well, y'all don't have y'all books yet. Y'all want to buy the books first and then follow along with me, or y'all? Let's get this last point, man. We need you to hit this last bucket. Come on, Kevin, one more rep. You can do it. But there's something terribly wrong with this picture. While I'm on the court or the weight pile struggling to get this last repetition in, the man encouraging me isn't my father. The guys trying to motivate me aren't my brothers. And as I'm setting up to receive the pass and take the game-winning shot, there isn't one woman in the crowd. Not my mother, girlfriend, or sister. Just hundreds of men. Most of whom I've just met. We're not playing in a gym, a high school, or a church or a summer league. But these mates around me are family, even if I don't want to admit it. When you leave the people who depend on you to come to prison, you change your life and theirs. But here I am, just one of millions of men, young, old, and between. You learn to trust these men, not to drop weights on your neck. Terrible trust, man. Talking about falling backwards. And kill you. On the court, your team now depends on you, just as people did on the streets. It's the same feeling, but then again different. There's so much wasted time. You know the feeling that comes over you when you hear your favorite Christmas song on the radio? Mine's a Silent Night by the Temptations. Every time I hear that song, I just want to look out for everybody. Especially that part when they say, my mind, I want you to be free. For all of our friends to listen to me. Whoever wrote that realized that at this time of year, even if it's only for a day, we should be free to give and receive love, to be all that our families need us to be. I have to hold back a tear. It's this part of the song that really gets to me, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one. But there is no way that me or any of the other guys crowded around the radio is going to cry. If a man cries in these places, it's the beginning of the end, because now you are considered soft. The only thing to do now is buckle down, forget that you have feelings, and get ready to go all out. As I look back at the clock radio, I noticed that almost everyone has walked away from the table and taken time to deal with the pain in their own way. Hey boy, look, you best to set your mind to working when you set foot on the Bodie plantation. That commercial comes to mind every day I get up at 3 in the morning to go to work in prison. I think of how similar it must have been to be a slave working on a plantation. Of course, there are a whole lot of differences in the two, but if you really look at it, there are more similarities. In slavery, we as a people were sold by our own kind, traded for wealth and collectibles to people on boats. With incarceration, we as a people are being sold out, snitched on by our own kind, traded for money to get high, for self-preservation, or as a part of some territorial conflict, sold to the people in white cars with the lights on top. In slavery, we as a people were packed together on boats of all sizes, small and large, bound and shackled, bunched up side by side without any room to move around, and with no window to allow us to see the ocean. With incarceration, we as inmates are packed into vans and buses of all sizes and bound together by a linked chain or shackled and cuffed, with no windows to see out. We're packed tight, with 6, sometimes 7 grown men on each side of a metal wall splitting the back of a van in half, leaving less than 3 feet of sitting space. That's 12 to 14 men packed into a van that's not even made for transportation. After traveling for days out on the ocean, slaves were delivered to the depot off the coast of the Americas, in this case, Virginia. After being taken to the depot, the slaves were taken off the boats, lined up, bid on, and taken away by their new owners. After countless hours of traveling, we inmates are delivered to a depot in Virginia, lined up and called upon by our new predetermined owners. Slaves were made to work for free and were broken physically, emotionally, and mentally. They had to turn to God for stability and a means of support in a world and time where no one else cared. Some slaves were given a chance to earn their freedom after giving their masters years of service and loyalty, but they were ridiculed in the process. They were taken away from their wives and children to go out to do the master's bidding. Whenever the master chose, he could freely go into the slave quarters and take any female. This was done in front of the man of the house, the children, whoever. Women were impregnated and enslaved men had no control. They had to accept the new child to prevent alienation. It wasn't the fault of the child. Inmates are forced to work, prove their loyalty to their master, and show their trustworthiness to become a trustee. The inmate is beaten down emotionally and physically by the administration. He's talked down to and treated as less than human. An inmate starts out earning 27 cents an hour and can work his way up to the maximum pay of 45 cents. Only by working for a privately owned corporation can an inmate earn more, sometimes up to a whole $1. A lot of money in this prison system. While incarcerated, the inmates' wives, daughters, and girlfriends are targeted by other men. Depending on the amount of time he's got, there's a chance that his loved one may get into a new relationship and also get pregnant. Accepting that new child is hard, but the inmate eventually realizes that it was his own fault since he's the one who got locked up. Maybe it was meant to be. After being released, slaves had to relocate north. The reason for this was that they were not educated enough to keep themselves from being captured and enslaved by someone else. Even though free slaves were given documents saying they were free, most didn't know how to read, write, or speak up for themselves. After doing his time, the inmate re-entered society. Maybe he spent his time getting his GED, but even with a diploma, most inmates lack the knowledge and understanding it takes to survive. Whether or not he's on parole or probation, the inmate is tagged as an ex-felon. Like being a former slave in slave territory, the ex-offender will continue to be a target for incarceration. Very few people relocate after being released, but those who do often find renewed success after moving someplace else to start anew. Thank y'all for listening.
All right. I'm going to wrap it up with a little section from the last chapter. Circle back to our question. If you can write your way out of one life and into the next life. Okay. Several years after they finished their memoirs and had been released from prison, Dean, Kelvin, Terrence, and Najee were all rearrested. I met Kelvin at court. Though he wanted me to testify, Kelvin's lawyer persuaded him to skip the jury trial, so there was no role for me to play as a character witness. Forced into a plea for possession with intent to distribute marijuana, Kelvin got 10 years with 8.5 suspended for work release, an arrangement that meant he would have to have all those years hanging over his head in case he got caught with drugs at work. This arrangement also meant more of his custodian's paycheck would go to the Commonwealth than to his family. And he could not spend time with his family. When he was not at work, he would be in the lockup downtown. To me, this was a case of mistaken identity. What the court saw was the Kelvin of several decades ago, the one who used to sell cocaine, not the 42-year-old grandfather with a little marijuana in his car. In his defense, Kelvin told the judge he had gone back to smoking because he had gotten depressed when his son, Cantrell, had been incarcerated, leaving Kelvin with his grandchildren and not enough money to raise them. It's the kind of reason that might drive another man to drink. It's not the kind of action warranting 10 years in prison. Najee, Dean, and Terrence's reincarceration stories differ only in small details. They too had fallen back on old habits, spinning their wheels, disappointing their loved ones, but ultimately harming no one. Had their lips touched blunts in more liberal parts of America, where marijuana laws are finally starting to change, their habits would not have been cause for incarceration. Had their skin been white, it's less likely that they would have been incarcerated. White and black people in America use drugs and sell drugs at more or less the same rates. But as civil rights activist Michelle Alexander has shown, African Americans are far more likely to be incarcerated for it. The problem is not drugs. The problem is the war on drugs that has targeted African Americans like Kelvin, Dean, Terrence, and Najee. At the time of this writing, all the men are free. I wrote that some 2009, I think, or 2008 when I was writing this. Kelvin works construction, and in his free time, he coaches basketball for kids in Richmond who need the kind of mentors he never had growing up. Terrence and Dean are writing again, laying the foundations for nonprofits that will help ex-offenders and at-risk African-American boys. You should ask Dean about that afterwards, by the way. Tony is engaged to be married. Brad moved to Virginia Beach and works in the building restoration industry. After prison, Carl got a bachelor's degree and a job in information technology with a Fortune 500 company. Ronald moved to Baltimore to be closer to his family. His Facebook pages are filled with prayers. Najee found his high school sweetheart, Sandy, on Facebook and now lives with her and her children in Virginia. He now has the family he longed for as a boy. And not long before he was finally released from prison, Stan discovered the identity of his birth mother and his given name, Maurice Jackson. At long last, he learned the facts of his identity, but he's chosen to remain Stanley Craddock. Ask him who his brother is, though. Ask the name of
Michael
his...
Jackson.
It's Michael. My life changed after this workshop, too. But unlike my co-authors, my change came when I went back to jail to build from this experience something new. In 2010, I helped to create Open Minds, a program that enables the incarcerated to take classes in the arts and the humanities with students and faculty from Virginia Commonwealth University. One of them is here tonight, Jesse Kramer. In these courses, people come together as equals to touch the elephants in the room. These creatures of crime, faith, addiction, incarceration, gender, sexuality, race, family life, violence, work, and the American dream. But there's so much more. Yet unlike those blind men in the parable, who each touch a different part of the elephant and argue over what they know to be true, convinced that the part they touch is the only part, we assemble to touch the diversity of experience. We assemble in humility. We write with vulnerability. And we grow, knowing this is only the beginning. We won't know just how partial our view of the world is until we learn to see through others' eyes. This is life in the light of inquiry. When I passed the spot in Libby Park today where years ago those boys raped a woman and beat her boyfriend, that was the incident that got me into the jail to start teaching, I see the danger of a broken community. But I see so much more than those 4 boys whose names and faces I never learned. I see the faces of writers I know today, and before I leave, I imagine them in a circle with me, facing each other, pencils moving, writing their ways out. Thank you. I was just there this afternoon with Jesse, doing exactly what I described there. So we've come to the end of the reading, but we're pleased to talk more and dialogue. You want to? What's on your mind?
Y'all got any questions about what knuckleheads do and why? Y'all might want to ask them now.
You got the experts up here, Mike.
Yeah, expert knucklehead. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Stan's sister.
Yeah.
First and foremost. When Stan was going through a lot of this, I wasn't at home. I'm older, so I had gone into the military, and I didn't see a lot of this. I didn't experience a lot of this. When I left home, he was a young boy. When I came back, he was a grown man, doing things that were not pleasing to me, not pleasing to my family, and I heard a lot of stories. But one thing that this book has done, I feel like it's given me my brother back. I could not watch prison shows because I could not fathom what my brother may be going through. So this book allowed me to see him as he is now. Not as he was, not as what I've heard. So I feel like I have a renewed relationship with him. I'm immensely proud of what he's doing with his life. We all have stories. I'm not even gonna try to start telling you some of mine. So we are all broken arrows. But one of the things that I have learned is we go through certain things in order to bless other folk. If he had not, if Calvin and Terrence and all of these guys had not been through that life, then they couldn't help anyone. And there are certain things that you can only help with because you've walked that path. So to all of you, you know, and to families who may have some loved one that's incarcerated, I challenge you to look inside yourselves, to see that everybody goes through something. You just didn't get caught, because we all do stuff. but realizing and to support your loved one because they have a story to tell. They have a testimony. And that testimony is only relevant because they've actually walked that path. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Love you, baby.
All right.
You draw back one, I got white nose.
You do that. That's awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate what y'all doing.
I appreciate you saying that, and I hope you all will stay and connect, share more resources about what's going on in RVA. Come talk to us, come buy a book. They're $18. Take a credit card. I got the little swipey thing because I had to kind of get upgraded here to be in the world here of commerce. Yeah, this is all new to me. You know, I'm not really in it for money, like he said. We're just trying to get the message out. So if you have any other ideas of places where you'd like us to come and do a presentation that can reach the people that need to be reached, come talk to us about that as well. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
All right. If you want, we're making CDs of this evening's performance. Come sign up if you want to get a CD of what you heard tonight. All right.